The impossible challenge. The Grand Hall of Vorthax Prime was filled with the most powerful warriors from across the galaxy. The air buzzed with energy, and the massive arena shimmered with holographic displays. The banners of different alien races waved in the air, each representing a warrior who had come to prove their worth. At the highest throne, Queen Syra, ruler of the Vorthax Empire, sat with a cold, calculating gaze. Her emerald green eyes scanned the warriors before her. She was not impressed. For centuries, only the strongest and smartest beings have been allowed to participate in the galactic trials. The challenges were designed to break even the most skilled fighters. No human had ever passed the first round. Humans were considered weak, slow, and fragile. That was about to change. The arrival of a human. The ground trembled as the next warrior stepped into the arena. Unlike the towering alien beasts or the cybernetic soldiers, this warrior looked small in comparison. A human. His name was Jack Hunter. The audience burst into laughter. A few warriors shook their heads in disbelief. A human. Competing in the galactic trials. It was a joke. One alien, a massive reptilian brute, smirked. "Are you lost, human? This is not a place for your kind." Jack didn't flinch. He adjusted his gloves, his expression calm. "I thought this was a challenge for warriors. Or are you all just scared?" The laughter died down. Some of the warriors snarled. The queen's expression remained unreadable, but a flicker of interest crossed her face. The first trial. The Gravity Gauntlet. Queen Syra stood from her throne, her voice echoing through the arena. "The first challenge is the Gravity Gauntlet. It will test your strength, endurance, and intelligence. Many have tried. Few have survived." The ground beneath Jack and the other warriors shifted. The battlefield transformed into a floating maze of platforms, spinning blades, and energy fields. Jack watched as the gravity changed unpredictably. Some platforms pulled downward with crushing force, while others had no gravity at all. One wrong move could send a warrior falling into the abyss. An alien warrior, covered in metallic armor, smirked. "Watch and learn, human." He leaped forward, only to misjudge the gravity shift. Within seconds, he was pulled violently into a crushing zone. The sound of metal twisting filled the arena. Eliminated. Jack exhaled. "All right, let's do this." The unexpected success. The countdown began. 3, 2, 1, go. Jack moved fast. Unlike the others, who relied on brute strength or advanced technology, he used something else. Instinct. He observed the gravity patterns, the way the platforms moved. Instead of rushing in blindly, he waited for the right moment. Then, with precise timing, he leaped. To everyone's shock, he landed perfectly. The warriors who had mocked him stared in disbelief. Even the queen leaned forward slightly. Jack continued, dodging energy blasts, rolling under laser grids, and jumping between platforms with impossible accuracy. One by one, alien warriors fell. They relied on their strength, but Jack relied on his mind. With a final leap, Jack reached the last platform. The first human to ever complete the Gravity Gauntlet. The arena fell silent. The queen's reaction. Queen Syra's golden crown glowed dimly as she studied the human before her. This was not possible. No human should have passed this trial so easily. One of her advisors whispered, "It must be luck, my queen." But Syra knew better. Luck did not exist in the galactic trials. Only skill. She narrowed her eyes. Interesting. Cliffhanger. The next challenge awaits. Jack wiped sweat from his brow, breathing heavily. He could feel the weight of every alien's gaze on him. They all wanted to know, how did a human succeed in one try? But Jack simply smirked. He looked up at the queen and said, "So, what's next?" The crowd roared, half in anger, half in disbelief. Queen Syra's lips curled into a small, dangerous smile. The next test would not be so easy. The alien queen's doubt. The Grand Hall of Vorthax Prime was no longer filled with laughter. The air had shifted, tension, curiosity, and a hint of disbelief hung in the atmosphere. The gravity gauntlet had crushed thousands of warriors before. Some had died. Others had gone mad from the shifting physics. Yet Jack Hunter, a mere human, had done it in one try. The audience did not cheer. They whispered. They speculated. And at the center of it all, Queen Syra sat in silence. Her long, midnight blue robes shimmered under the artificial stars of the royal chamber. Her golden crown pulsed faintly, reacting to her shifting thoughts. She was intrigued, but also insulted. No human had ever impressed her before, and she refused to believe that one had now. Her clawed fingers tightened against the armrest of her throne. "Impossible," she muttered under her breath. An accusation. One of her generals, Lord Xivan, stepped forward. His 4 insect-like eyes twitched as he sneered at Jack. "This human must have cheated, my queen. There is no other explanation." Jack, who had been standing in the center of the arena, smirked at the accusation. "Yeah, and how exactly did I cheat? Did I use my superior human brain? My incredible luck? My good looks?" A few chuckles echoed through the crowd. But Syra did not smile. Instead, she slowly rose from her throne, her emerald green eyes locked onto Jack's. "I do not believe in luck." Her voice was calm, but carried the weight of 1,000 battles. Jack folded his arms. "Good. Then I guess you'll just have to accept that I'm better than your warriors." Gasps filled the hall. The queen's guards tensed. A few warriors stepped forward, hands gripping their weapons. No one spoke to the queen like that. Yet Syra laughed. A soft, almost musical sound. It was not amusement, but something else. Something dangerous. "Very well, human," she said, stepping down from her throne. Her movements were slow, calculated. "If you are truly as skilled as you claim, then let's see how your mind compares to my best warriors." Jack raised an eyebrow. "A fight." Syra shook her head. "A test of intelligence." Jack sighed. I was hoping to punch something." The impossible puzzle. The floor beneath them shifted once again. The arena morphed, transformed, reshaped. The hard metal panels pulled away, revealing a floating structure of endless, shifting patterns. A massive, glowing puzzle cube appeared in the center. It pulsed with strange, alien energy. A labyrinth of rotating pieces, shifting constantly. Syra's voice rang out. "This is the celestial mind trap. It is a challenge built by the most advanced species in the universe. It has been attempted by millions. And yet, no one has solved it in less than 5 hours." Jack looked at the enormous structure, his hands on his hips. "And what's the record?" 4 hours and 46 minutes. Jack let out a low whistle. "Wow. And what happens if I fail?" Syra's smile was sharp. "The mind trap does not allow failure. If your mind cannot escape, it will remain trapped, forever." Silence. The warriors watching shifted uneasily. Even the greatest of them had needed days to complete the puzzle. Some never returned. Jack cracked his knuckles. "All right, let's do this." The moment his hand touched the first glowing panel, the puzzle came alive. A mind unlike any other. Jack's vision blurred. The world around him changed. He was no longer standing in an arena. Instead, he was floating in an endless black void, surrounded by swirling stars and shifting symbols. The puzzle moved and reshaped itself. Pathways formed and vanished. Strange glyphs appeared, written in languages that had not existed for 1,000,000 years. The voices of long-dead civilizations whispered through the void. "Solve us." Jack exhaled. "Okay, let's see. Shifting pathways, no clear entry, and a constantly changing structure. Sounds like my last relationship." He focused. His mind worked differently than the others. While alien species had spent hours analyzing the puzzle, using logic and calculations, Jack did something different. He felt it. He let his instincts take over. Patterns began to form in his mind. He saw pathways before they even appeared. And then, just as the puzzle shifted again, Jack moved. 1 step, 2 steps, a jump, a slide. He was inside the core of the puzzle, a place no one had ever reached before. From the outside, the warriors gasped as they watched the massive structure glow and shift rapidly. It was reacting to Jack's presence. The queen watches closely. Zyra's eyes narrowed as she studied the puzzle's movement. It had never reacted like this before. "What are you, human?" she whispered. Her advisors watched with growing unease. He should be struggling. This is not possible. But Jack wasn't struggling. He was solving it. Fast. 1 minute passed. 2 minutes. 3. And then, the entire puzzle structure stopped moving. A deep hum filled the air. The warriors stood frozen. Jack stepped forward, stretching his arms. Woo, that was fun. He looked up at the queen. So, how did I do? The silence was deafening. Cliffhanger. The queen's rage. Zyra's nails dug into her throne. She had been prepared to erase this human from existence, to prove that he was nothing more than an insignificant anomaly. Instead, he had solved a puzzle that had stood undefeated for centuries, and he had done it in under 5 minutes. The queen slowly rose to her feet. Her golden crown pulsed with an intense light. Jack felt the shift in the air, the tension, the energy. He had just made a very powerful enemy, or a very powerful ally. The queen's voice was calm, but her eyes burned with something dangerous. "I will not accept this." Jack smirked. "Then let's see what else you've got." The queen raised her hand. The ground beneath them began to crack. And just like that, the next challenge began. The unfair test. A storm of silence hung over the grand arena. The celestial mind trap had stopped moving. Its ancient energy dimmed for the first time in history. Jack Hunter had done what millions of warriors, scholars, and machines had failed to do. And he did it in under 5 minutes. Yet, there was no applause. The crowd of alien warriors, royal guards, and scholars stood frozen in disbelief. Some refused to accept what they had seen. Others whispered theories, cheating, trickery, an error in the test. Jack, standing in the center of the arena, simply shrugged. He looked up at Queen Zyra, whose expression remained unreadable. But Jack knew what he saw in her eyes. Not just anger, not just disbelief. Fear. She feared what he represented, a human defying the very laws of the universe. The queen's fury. Slowly, Queen Zyra stood. Her golden crown pulsed with a furious energy. Her voice, calm but sharp as a blade, rang through the air. "This is unacceptable." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Unacceptable? What, you mad that I'm just too good?" The royal guard stepped forward, their weapons humming with energy. Some warriors gripped their blades, ready for a fight. One of Zyra's advisors, a cold-blooded alien named General Vexar, sneered. "Humans do not solve the celestial mind trap. It is impossible." Jack smirked. "Then I guess I just did the impossible." Zyra's fist tightened. She could not allow this. A human making a mockery of the trials. It would shake the entire empire's belief in superiority. She had to prove that Jack's success was nothing but a fluke. A new challenge. The Void Gauntlet. The queen's emerald green eyes glowed. She turned to her royal court. "Prepare the Void Gauntlet." A collective gasp rippled through the arena. Some warriors stepped back in shock. Others whispered amongst themselves. Even her advisors looked uneasy. Jack noticed. His smirk faded just a little. "The Void Gauntlet," he repeated. "That sounds fun." Queen Zyra's lips curled into a slow, dangerous smile. "Oh, it is." With a wave of her hand, the entire floor beneath Jack shifted. The arena shook violently as ancient machinery roared to life. The very air rippled with dark energy. From the center of the arena, a massive black void began to form. It pulsed, expanded, and then opened. Jack felt it immediately. It wasn't just a physical test. It wasn't just a battle. It was something much worse. The horror of the void. The void gauntlet was not a place. It was an absence of reality itself. A floating, endless void where time was unstable, energy was drained, and the mind itself could be devoured. The rules of physics, logic, and survival did not exist inside the void gauntlet. And Jack was about to be thrown inside. A warrior standing nearby, a massive reptilian creature, looked at Jack with pity. No one has ever survived this trial, human. Jack cracked his neck. Yeah. Well, no one thought I'd solve your fancy puzzle either. Queen Syra smiled coldly. Enter the void, human. Let's see if you can escape. The energy from the black hole-like portal intensified. Jack felt the air being pulled toward it. And then, without warning, he was pushed inside, falling into nothingness. For a brief moment, Jack felt weightless. Then, he felt nothing. His body, his senses, his very thoughts seemed to blur. He wasn't sure if he was falling, floating, or ceasing to exist entirely. Strange whispers echoed around him. Voices from things that should not exist. Mortal flesh does not belong here. Shapes that defied logic slithered through the darkness. Jack felt his energy draining. His thoughts scattered. His breathing slowed. The void was eating him alive. Jack's greatest strength. Jack had faced impossible odds before. He had fought against nature, against war, against death itself. And he had survived. His mind sharpened. He focused. If the void was meant to break the mind, then the answer was not to fight it. The answer was to adapt. Jack let himself drift. Instead of resisting, he observed. The way the darkness moved. The way time looped in fragments. And then, he saw it. A pattern. A hidden path between the impossible. He moved. The impossible escape. From the outside, the warriors watched the black void pulse and swirl. They expected Jack to vanish forever, like all the others. Minutes passed, then an hour. Silence. And then, the entire void gauntlet trembled. The swirling darkness shattered like glass. And Jack Hunter stepped out, completely unarmed. The crowd lost their minds. Gasps, screams, disbelief. This was not possible. Yet here he was, standing, smirking, alive. The Queen's reaction. Queen Syra's nails dug into her throne. She had been certain that the void would consume him. But Jack had walked through it and returned. Her warriors stared at her, some with confusion, some with fear. If a human could survive the void gauntlet, what else could he do? Jack tilted his head. That all you got? Silence. And then, for the first time in 1,000 years, Queen Syra felt doubt. Jack wasn't just winning. He was rewriting the rules of the universe. Cliffhanger. The next challenge awaits. Syra's expression darkened. She could not allow this to continue. If Jack Hunter kept defying her challenges, if he kept winning where no one else could, it would change the entire galaxy. She would not let that happen. With a single wave of her hand, she spoke 4 words that shook the arena. Prepare the final test. Jack smirked. Whatever was coming next, he was ready. The unbelievable victory. The galactic arena was no longer the same. Moments ago, Jack Hunter, a mere human, had done the impossible. He had escaped the void gauntlet, an entity that had swallowed entire civilizations. No warrior, no scholar, no machine had ever returned. Yet here he was, standing, smirking, breathing. The crowd of alien warriors didn't cheer. They stared. Some whispered in languages unknown to human ears. Others refused to look at him at all, as if acknowledging him would make him more real. Jack rolled his shoulders. So, what's next? The Queen's rage. On her throne, Queen Syra did not move. She sat, fingers pressed together, her golden crown pulsing softly. The air around her rippled with restrained energy. For the first time in her reign, she was unsure. She had thrown everything at this human. The gravity gauntlet, the celestial mind trap, the void. Jack had not just survived. He had won. That was not supposed to happen. Her empire had always believed in strength, power, absolute control. If a mere human could succeed where her strongest warriors had failed, what did that mean for the Vorthax Empire? What did it mean for her? One of her advisors, Lord Sivan, finally spoke, his voice tight with unease. "My queen, the warriors are afraid." Syra's emerald green eyes flickered toward him. Afraid of a human. Lord Sivan swallowed hard. They no longer see him as weak. That was the real problem. It was never about Jack's strength. It was about what he represented. A challenge to the very foundation of their empire. Syra slowly rose from her throne. The moment she did, the entire arena fell silent. She spoke only 2 words. "Final test." The warriors gasped. The advisors exchanged uneasy glances. Even Jack paused. Something had changed. This wasn't about proving herself anymore. It was about erasing him. The trial of the Titans. The ground rumbled. The sky above the arena cracked open, revealing a swirling vortex of energy. The battlefield began to reshape. Metallic platforms rose from the ground, forming a massive floating battlefield. Walls of pure energy surrounded it, glowing with an ominous light. Jack's gut tightened. Whatever was coming next, it wasn't going to be like the other trials. Then the gates opened, and they stepped forward. Not 1, not 2, but 3 Vorthax Titans. Jack's breath hitched. They were massive, standing over 30 feet tall, their bodies infused with quantum-enhanced armor. Their eyes burned with raw power. Each of them had defeated entire star systems alone. They weren't just warriors. They were gods. And Jack had to defeat all 3. Alone. Queen Syra's voice echoed through the arena. "Defeat them, and I will acknowledge your strength." Her tone was calm, controlled. But Jack knew the truth. This wasn't a challenge. It was an execution. The Titan's attack. The first Titan moved instantly, a blur of metal and energy, faster than Jack thought possible. Boom. Jack barely dodged as a massive fist slammed into the ground where he had been standing. The impact alone shattered the battlefield. The second Titan swung its energy blade, a weapon so powerful that it cut through space itself. Jack ducked, feeling the air itself warp around him. The third Titan opened its mouth, releasing a sonic shockwave that sent Jack flying across the battlefield. He crashed hard, rolling across the metallic ground. Pain flared in his ribs. 3 enemies. No weapons. No armor. No chance. Jack gritted his teeth. So this is how she wanted to play it. Jack's counterattack. Jack forced himself up. He wasn't the strongest. He wasn't the fastest. But he had something they didn't. Creativity. While the Titans fought with programmed precision, Jack fought with instinct. Adaptation. Chaos. He ran straight toward the first Titan, but at the last second, he dropped low, sliding under its massive legs. The Titan stumbled forward, momentarily off balance. That was all Jack needed. He jumped onto its back, using its own armor as a foothold. Before it could react, Jack grabbed a loose energy core from its armor and yanked it free. Boom. The first Titan collapsed, its own systems betraying it. The audience gasped. Jack grinned. 1 down. The second Titan rushed him, its energy blade flashing. Jack ran straight toward it. At the last moment, he dropped and rolled, causing the Titan's swing to miss and hit the third Titan instead. The energy blade sliced clean through its ally. 2 down. The final Titan staggered, caught off guard. That was all Jack needed. He sprinted, jumped onto its chest, and slammed his fist into its exposed core. A loud crack filled the air. The Titan's energy dimmed. It froze. Then, slowly, collapsed. 3 down. The arena falls silent. Jack stood alone on the battlefield. 3 unstoppable Titans, defeated. No tricks, no cheats. Just him. The entire empire had seen it. The warriors, the nobles, the queen. He had won. Again. And this time, there was no denying it. Queen Syra stared at him, her expression unreadable. Jack met her gaze. So, do I win yet? For a moment, there was no response. Then, the queen did something no one expected. She smiled, a slow, knowing smile, and whispered, "Not yet." The ground beneath Jack cracked. The air turned to fire. And then, everything went black. Cliffhanger. The final trial begins. Jack's consciousness faded. His body vanished from the arena. The last thing he heard was Queen Syra's voice, soft but final. "Now, human, let's see if you can survive the last test." Jack had no idea where he was going, but he was about to find out. The Queen's last trick. Jack was falling. Not through air, not through space, but through something else entirely. The world around him wasn't black or white. It was an endless kaleidoscope of shifting realities, bending, stretching, collapsing in on themselves. The moment Queen Syra whispered "not yet," the arena had vanished, and Jack had been ripped away from existence. His body twisted. His mind reeled. For the first time in this entire tournament, he felt something deep in his gut. Not fear, uncertainty. And then, he stopped. Not landed. Stopped. As if all motion, all physics, had simply decided to pause. Jack blinked. He was somewhere new. The impossible battlefield. The ground beneath him was not solid. It felt like standing on light itself, shifting, glowing, humming softly beneath his feet. The sky above was wrong. No stars, no planets, just a vast, empty canvas, stretching in all directions, like the universe had been erased. Jack exhaled. "Well, that's new." A voice echoed through the space. "Welcome, human." Jack turned, and there she was, Queen Syra, but not as she was before. She was no longer sitting on her throne, no longer the distant ruler looking down from above. She was here, standing before him. Her golden crown was gone. Her battle armor shimmered like liquid metal. Her emerald green eyes glowed softly. She wasn't just watching anymore. She was challenging him, personally. The final test. A duel beyond reality. Jack exhaled. "So, this is your last trick. No more obstacles. No more impossible challenges." Syra's lips curled into a dangerous smile. No more tests. Her hand raised. The air rippled. And then, Jack's entire body felt like it was being crushed. Power beyond comprehension. It wasn't like gravity. It wasn't like pain. It was something worse. A force that didn't just press down on him. It unraveled him, pulling at the very fabric of his being. Jack dropped to one knee, gasping. He had faced titans. He had survived the void. He had conquered every challenge. But this was beyond strength, beyond speed, beyond intelligence. This was a force greater than existence itself. Queen Syra tilted her head. "This is what true power feels like, human." Jack gritted his teeth. "Yeah, feels a little cheap." She chuckled. "You think this is unfair?" Jack forced himself to stand. Sweat dripped from his brow. His muscles screamed, but he still met her gaze. "I think it's boring. A duel of mind, will, and soul." Syra's expression flickered, just for a second. Amusement, curiosity. Then she moved. Not like the titans, not like the warriors before. She blinked out of existence, then reappeared inches from Jack. Her hand lashed out. Jack dodged, barely. A shockwave erupted, splitting the very air. Jack's instincts screamed. He countered, a punch aimed at her side. She didn't block. She let him land the hit, and when his fist connected, the universe itself cracked. Jack felt his mind split. For a brief second, he saw everything. The past, the future, the truth behind reality. And then, just as quickly, it was gone. He staggered back, gasping. His hands trembled. His breath was ragged. Zyra's eyes studied him carefully. Interesting. Jack wiped blood from his lip. That's one way to describe it. The human factor. Jack wasn't the strongest. He wasn't the fastest. He wasn't even the smartest. But he was something else entirely. Something no alien had ever accounted for. A human. With all the recklessness, defiance, and sheer refusal to give up that came with it. Zyra lunged again. Faster. Stronger. More precise. Jack moved with instinct. Every attack barely missed. Every counter landed just enough to shift the battle. For the first time in 1,000 years, Queen Zyra struggled. Jack saw it. He felt it. She wasn't just testing him. She was fighting to win. The moment everything changed, the duel raged on. Seconds felt like hours. Then, Jack saw an opening. He pivoted, twisting his entire body. He threw a final, all-or-nothing strike. And Zyra didn't dodge. Her hand shot forward. Their attacks collided. And in that moment, everything froze. Jack's mind went blank. His body stopped moving. The battlefield vanished. And then, he was back. The arena, the crowd, the end. Jack gasped for air. He was back in the arena. The warriors, the nobles, the empire, they were all watching. And before him, Queen Zyra stood, unharmed, calm, studying him. The silence was unbearable. Then, Zyra smiled. Not a smirk, not a cold, calculating expression, a real, genuine smile. Cliffhanger, the decision. She stepped forward, looked Jack in the eyes, and said something that no one expected. You win. Gasps filled the air. Warriors stumbled back in shock. Jack blinked. Wait, what? Zyra's voice was calm, firm, and final. You have proven yourself, the first human to ever challenge a god and survive. Jack exhaled, then grinned. Damn right I did. The warriors didn't know whether to cheer, kneel, or run. And as Jack stood there, victorious, he realized something else. This wasn't just his victory. This was the beginning of something much, much bigger. And Queen Zyra, she knew it too. Which is why, as she turned to face her people, her next words shook the entire galaxy. The era of humanity has begun. The duel that shook the galaxy. The Vorthax arena was silent. A silence so deep, so absolute, that it felt like the entire galaxy was holding its breath. Jack Hunter stood in the center, battered but unbroken. His body ached from the impossible duel, his mind still reeling from the fight against Queen Zyra in the realm beyond reality. And yet, he was still here. He had not been erased. He had not been shattered. He had survived. And now he was standing before the most powerful ruler in the known universe. The Queen's declaration. Queen Zyra stood across from him, her regal form bathed in golden light. The energy of the arena still hummed around her, crackling like a living storm. Every warrior, every noble, every scholar watched her. They were waiting for her to deny it, to reject the human's victory, to end him. But instead, she did something no one expected. She kneeled, a single knee to the ground, a warrior's bow, a gesture of respect. Gasps echoed through the grand hall. Warriors stumbled back. The advisors, many of whom had served her for centuries, stood frozen. Even Jack was caught off guard. The meaning of the bow. Jack wiped the sweat from his brow. So, this means I win, Right. Xyra lifted her head, smirking. It means, you are the first human I have ever acknowledged. Jack raised an eyebrow. Not exactly a crown and riches kind of victory. Huh. Xyra rose to her feet, her expression returning to its usual icy control. Crowning you would be meaningless. Gold would be insignificant. What you have earned. She looked around, her gaze sweeping over her people. Is something no warrior has ever claimed before. Jack tilted his head. And that is. She smiled. The right to challenge a god. The true final trial. The silence that followed was different. This wasn't the shock of an unexpected outcome. This was fear. A fear that crept into the bones of every alien present. Even Jack felt it. Because those words meant something more. Xyra lifted her hand, and the entire arena shifted again. The floating battlefield began to rise. The energy fields that lined the stadium expanded, stretched beyond the sky. The very stars above them began to distort. Jack took a step back. Okay, I don't like where this is going. Xyra's voice rippled through existence itself. You have proven your mind, your will, your strength. But now, human. She turned to face him, her emerald green eyes now burning with cosmic energy. You will prove your right to exist beyond mortal limits. And just like that, the sky shattered. The arena of the gods. Jack blinked and found himself somewhere else. The battlefield was gone. The warriors, the nobles, the empire, all gone. In their place was a void of endless galaxies, spiraling in an infinite dance. Jack stood on nothingness itself, and before him, Queen Xyra hovered in midair. No longer just a ruler, no longer just a warrior. She was something more. Her body glowed like a collapsing star. Her form flickered between her physical presence and something far, far greater. Jack exhaled. Okay, this is getting ridiculous. The challenge, one strike. Xyra's voice was different here. It was woven into the fabric of existence itself. One final test, human. One strike. Jack frowned. Come again. She extended her hand toward him. You have one chance to strike me. One hit. If you succeed, I will acknowledge you fully. Jack narrowed his eyes. And if I miss? Xyra smiled. You will cease to exist. Jack let out a slow breath. Great. Loved those odds. The impossible attack. Jack had fought titans, monsters, warriors from across the stars. But this was something else. Xyra wasn't just fast. She existed in multiple places at once. She wasn't just strong. She was woven into the very rules of reality. She wasn't just a ruler. She was a force of nature. And Jack had one chance. One. He clenched his fists. He had always survived by outthinking, outblasting, and outmaneuvering his enemies. But this wasn't a battle of strength or skill. This was a battle of understanding. Jack closed his eyes. And he listened. He felt the way the void shifted, the way the universe hummed, the way Xyra's energy danced between dimensions. And in that moment, he saw it. The single point in space where she would exist, completely, fully, unguarded. Jack opened his eyes. There you are. He moved. The strike that changed everything. Xyra saw him disappear. Not teleport. Not run. Disappear. And then, he was behind her. Before she could react, before she could shift reality again, Jack struck. A single perfectly timed punch to her core. Boom. The universe buckled. The void collapsed inward. Reality itself fractured. For the first time in her existence, Queen Xyra stumbled. The aftermath. When the light faded, when the universe stitched itself back together, Jack found himself back in the Vorthax arena. He was on his feet, alive. And before him, Queen Xyra kneeled once again. This time, it wasn't just a gesture. It was acknowledgement. Cliffhanger, the beginning of a new era. The warriors did not cheer. The nobles did not speak. Because something had changed. Jack Hunter was no longer just a human. He was something more. And as Queen Syra finally stood, she spoke words that altered the course of history. The empire kneels to no one. And yet today, I kneel to you. She turned to her people. From this moment forward, humanity stands among the gods. Jack exhaled. Well, that's one hell of a promotion. And somewhere, across the stars, the universe itself shuddered, because it knew. Everything had just changed. The human who defied destiny. The galaxy had changed. For the first time in the history of the Vorthax Empire, for the first time in millennia of conquest, war, and absolute rule, the Queen had kneeled. Not to an ancient god, not to a cosmic force, not to an empire-spanning civilization, but to a human. Jack Hunter stood at the center of it all. Battered, bruised, but victorious. His one strike against Queen Syra had shattered the very laws of existence. And now, every warrior, every noble, every scholar in the great arena of Vorthax stood frozen, staring at the impossible. The silence was a living thing. Then, one by one, the warriors kneeled. Not because they were forced, not because they feared him, because they recognized something undeniable. Humanity had arrived. The Queen's final words. Jack took a slow breath. Okay, what now? Queen Syra rose to her feet. Though her golden crown still shone, though her presence still radiated power, her expression had changed. She was no longer looking at him as a challenger. She was looking at him as an equal. She spoke loud enough for the entire galactic court to hear. The trials are over. More gasps. Some warriors looked to one another, confused. But the Queen wasn't done. She turned toward the thousands in the arena. For eons, we believed strength was defined by power, by conquest, by control. Her emerald green eyes flickered. We were wrong. The crowd shifted uneasily. No one had ever heard the Queen say those words before. She turned back to Jack. You have changed the very foundation of the universe, human. Jack smirked. Not bad for a guy who just wanted to prove himself. Sarah chuckled softly. Then, she did something that shocked the entire empire. She offered him her hand. Jack stared at it for a moment. Wait, what's this? Syra's voice was steady. A choice. Jack's smirk faded. The arena held its breath. A choice that would shape the future. You have two paths before you, Syra said. She extended one hand toward the vast crowd of kneeling warriors. Take your place among the strongest beings in the universe. Lead. Command. Take your rightful place beside me as a ruler of the stars. Jack felt the weight of her words. The power, the temptation. Then, Syra slowly turned her other palm upward. Or go back. Jack blinked. Back. Her expression softened. To your people. To your world. You will leave behind everything here. No throne. No empire. You will be just human again. The warriors stiffened. This was madness. To offer a human rule over the Vorthax. To let him walk away after all this. It was unheard of. But Syra waited. Because she already knew what Jack's answer would be. The human factor. Jack ran a hand through his messy hair. He let out a breath and looked out at the thousands of warriors kneeling before him. He looked back at Syra, the most powerful being in the galaxy, offering him everything. And he smiled. I appreciate it. Really, I do. He shook his head. But that's not me. Syra's eyes narrowed. You refuse power. Jack shrugged. Power's overrated. The warriors murmured in disbelief. Jack turned, glancing up at the endless sky above. I didn't come here to rule. I didn't come here to conquer. I just came to prove that humans. He smirked. Are worth something. A beat of silence. Then Syra laughed. Not a polite laugh. A full, genuine, amused laugh. She looked at him with something no one had ever seen before. Pride, respect, understanding. The new legend begins. She stepped forward and placed a hand on Jack's shoulder. Then go, human. Jack felt the world around him shift. The sky cracked with energy. A portal began to open, a way home. He turned toward it, paused, glanced back at the Queen, the Empire, the thousands who had witnessed his rise, and grinned. Hey, Tyra. She raised an eyebrow. Yes? Jack winked. Try not to miss me too much. And with that, he stepped through. Epilogue. A new era. The portal closed. Jack Hunter was gone. And Queen Tyra. She turned back to her warriors, her empire, her people. And with fire in her voice, she spoke the words that would be remembered for all eternity. The age of Vorthak's dominance has ended. She smiled. The age of humanity has begun. Far away, on a small blue planet orbiting a yellow sun, a single human walked under the stars, unaware that he had just changed the fate of the universe. And somewhere, across the cosmos, the gods themselves whispered his name. Jack Hunter, the human who defied destiny.